Before we begin today's incredible story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Cassidy Marlowe. I'm 31 years old. And last Thanksgiving, my father stood up in front of nearly 30 relatives, jabbed his finger across the dining room in my direction, and told me to sit down and mind my business, all because I had the nerve to ask what my grandmother had left me in her will. The room fell silent for a beat. Then the laughter came. My face burned so hot I could feel it in my ears. But I held his gaze and said 2 words. All right. Then I folded my napkin, set it on the table, and walked upstairs. The next morning, he came to my door with that knock of his. Sharp, impatient, the knock of a man who believes he's already won before anyone answers. "Cassidy," he said, "time to apologize." What he found instead was an empty room, bed made, closet cleared, nothing left behind except my grandmother's photograph placed face down on the nightstand. By the time he made it back downstairs, the doorbell was already ringing. The woman standing on that porch was about to change everything. But before I get to her, I need to take you back to a Tuesday morning in October when my grandmother passed away and the first domino fell. Her name was Loretta Jean Marlowe. She was 84 years old. She slipped away quietly at a hospital in Atlanta just before 7 in the morning. I got the call from my mother while I was sitting at my kitchen table in Decatur, drinking coffee I'd made too strong, sketching out a floral design for a client's wedding. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. "It's Mama, Cass. She's gone." I drove to the hospital in the rain with no music, just Atlanta traffic and the sound of my own breathing. When I walked in, my father was already stationed in the corridor. Frank Marlowe, 61, retired civil court judge, 6 feet tall, in the kind of pressed khakis that announce themselves before the man does. He wasn't grieving. He was on his phone, speaking in a low, controlled tone about something called a probate timeline. He ended the call when he noticed me and didn't bother with a hello. My brother Davis stood beside him in a dark blazer, even there at the hospital, his arm looped through Dad's like a campaign photo. I stood at the far end of the hallway holding a paper cup of bad coffee I never drank. The last time I'd seen Grandma Loretta, she was in her wicker chair on the back porch, holding my hand with a grip that surprised me. Her voice dropped low the way it always did when she didn't want Frank within earshot. "Cassidy, I've taken care of things. You trust me, don't you?" I nodded. I didn't fully understand yet what she meant. At the funeral, my father delivered the eulogy. 12 minutes about legacy, responsibility, and how the Marlowe name would carry forward through his son. He said Davis's name 4 times. He said my mother's name once. He did not say mine at all. Afterward, a woman I didn't recognize found me near the exit, maybe 60, silver hair cut close, charcoal blazer, small gold earrings. She took my hand with a firm grip. "Your grandmother talked about you constantly," she said quietly. "I'll be in touch." She was gone before I could ask her name. That evening, 15 of us gathered at the family home in Roswell, the white farmhouse Grandma Loretta had built with her own inheritance money. Wide porches, a magnolia in the front yard so old it had its own mythology, and a vegetable garden out back where she grew tomatoes and dahlias side by side, because she believed beauty and usefulness were never meant to be enemies. My father sat at the head of the dining table and raised his glass. "Mama left her affairs in my hands to manage. I'll make sure her assets go where they're most needed, to the people in a position to use them wisely." His eyes found mine. "That means you don't need to stress about any of it, Cassidy. You're still finding your way. We all know that." I set my fork down. "Dad, Grandma told me—" "Mama was confused near the end," he said, cutting right across me. "Whatever she thought she promised doesn't hold up legally. Let it go." My mother stared at her plate. She didn't look up. She never looked up. After dinner, I went upstairs to the bedroom I'd grown up in. Out of old habit, I pulled open the nightstand drawer. There was an envelope inside that hadn't been there before, cream stationery, my name on the front and my grandmother's handwriting. Shaky, but deliberate, like she'd pressed hard enough to make the words permanent. Inside was a letter and a partial photocopy of a document with the words, "Irrevocable Trust Agreement, Loretta Jean Marlowe, printed across the top. Halfway down the first page, highlighted in yellow, beneficiary, Cassidy Ann Marlowe. My hands were trembling when I read the letter. Cassidy, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Frank is already doing exactly what I always knew he would. I'm sorry I couldn't stop him while I was still here. Men like your father only respond to documents. The original trust is with my attorney, Patricia Holden. Her office is in Midtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street. The copy I've left you is partial, not enough to prove anything on its own, but enough to know I'm telling the truth. Don't show anyone. Not Frank, not Davis, not even your mother. Wait for the right moment. Patricia will know what to do. You are my wild, beautiful, stubborn girl, and you always were worth far more than they ever let you believe. All my love, always. Grandma. I pressed that letter against my chest and sat in the dark for a long time. 3 weeks later, I received a forwarded email sent to me by mistake from Davis. Subject line, Trust Amendment Draft Petition, 7 messages. Back and forth between my brother and my father. Davis had drafted a legal petition to the probate court requesting a change of beneficiary. The grounds? My financial instability and poor judgment. He'd cited my student debt, my inconsistent career history, and my lack of property as evidence I was unfit to receive a significant inheritance. But the line that made my vision go white wasn't the legal language. It was something Davis had typed casually at the bottom of the chain, like a grocery list. She won't push back, Dad. She never does. That's the whole point. I screenshotted every message and backed it up twice. Then I called my mother. Tell Dad I'll be there for Thanksgiving. I was going back, but not to make peace. The next morning, I called Patricia Holden's office. The receptionist put me on hold for exactly 12 seconds. Then, Ms. Marlowe, Ms. Holden has been expecting you. Can you come in this week? 2 days later, I was sitting across from her at a clean desk on the 14th floor of a midtown building, the Atlanta skyline gray and low behind her. Patricia Holden was composed, precise, the kind of person who has seen everything and allowed none of it to shake her. Your grandmother hired me 11 years ago, she said. 7 years ago, she came back and asked me to establish an irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary. She said, and I'm quoting her directly, Frank will try to undo it. Make sure he can't. She slid the original document across the desk. $575,000 in a trust managed by First National Bank of Georgia. Notary seal. Loretta's signature in blue ink. Steady and certain. Irrevocable means your father, as trustee, cannot change the beneficiary without your written consent or a court ruling of mental incapacity at the time of signing. Your grandmother had her physician conduct a cognitive evaluation that same week. She was fully competent. The results are on file. I exhaled. It was the first real breath I'd taken in a month. There's more. Patricia opened a second folder. Your father filed a petition 4 weeks ago. He told the court he was unable to locate you. She looked at me steadily. He has your phone number. He has your address. You slept under his roof last Thanksgiving. I showed her the email chain. She read it without expression, then looked up. This is evidence of fraudulent misrepresentation to a probate court and a potential breach of fiduciary duty. If you want to pursue it, you have more than enough. I want to pursue it, I said. She nodded, then almost gently. There's one more thing. Your grandmother also left you the lake house in Blue Ridge. I went still. The little cedar cabin where Grandma Loretta took me every summer. Where we'd sit on the dock at dusk watching the mountains go purple, and she'd tell me I was built for something nobody in our family had thought to name yet. She left it to me. Loretta spent years making sure you'd be protected, Patricia said. The question is when you want to use it. Thanksgiving, I said. He's invited the whole family, 28 people. She studied me for a moment, then gave one slow nod. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I drove north through Georgia with one bag, my camel coat from a consignment shop, and a manila folder thick with notarized copies. The originals stayed with Patricia. The Marlowe farmhouse appeared through the pine trees the way it always had. White clapboard, wide porch, the magnolia standing guard. From the outside, the picture of a solid Southern family. My mother met me at the door and held on 3 seconds too long. That night, my father barely acknowledged me. Davis made a comment about my car. His wife, Brenly, offered her performing smile. I smiled back and said nothing. I went upstairs, slid the manila folder beneath the mattress, and stood at the window staring out at the vegetable garden. Brown now, overgrown, and waiting. Nobody had tended it since Grandma grew too frail to kneel in the dirt. I pressed my palm against the cold glass. I'm here, Grandma. Thanksgiving morning, the house filled the way a theater does before the curtain rises. By noon, 28 relatives had spread through every room. My father moved among them like a man presiding over a verdict. I was seated at the overflow table between my 9-year-old second cousin Wren and an empty chair. At 4 o'clock, my father rose at the head of the main table beneath the chandelier and lifted his glass. This Thanksgiving, we honor Mama, and we celebrate the man carrying this family's future forward, my son Davis, who just made junior partner. Applause filled the room. Davis accepted it with a rehearsed half-smile. From the folding table, my Aunt Roberta called out, "What about Cassidy? Anything exciting, honey?" "Cassidy's still finding her footing," my father said, never glancing my way. "She does lovely work, flowers and things. We're proud of her in our own way." He smiled around the room. "Every family needs someone to remind the rest of us to stop and smell the roses. Right, Cass?" Laughter rippled through the room, warm, easy, and entirely at my expense. Wren looked up at me with wide eyes. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I handed her a roll and nodded. After the pie was half gone and the bourbon was flowing freely, my father stood again. The room settled. "Tomorrow morning, I'll be sharing Mama's final wishes regarding her estate. I want everyone present." He looked directly at me when he said it. His smile carried an edge. That night, I did the dishes alone. Davis appeared in the kitchen doorway, wine glass dangling from 2 fingers. "You know, Cass, you really ought to just let Dad handle all of this. It's complicated. You don't have the background for it." I kept scrubbing the roasting pan, and then something inside me, something that had been pulled taut for 31 years, finally went completely still. "Davis," I said quietly without turning around, "do you know what Grandma actually left me?" The silence behind me shifted. I glanced over my shoulder. His face had gone very still. He walked out of the kitchen without a word. 10 minutes later, my father's voice boomed from the living room. "Cassidy, get in here." I dried my hands and walked in. 28 faces turned toward me. My father stood in the center of the room, pointing at me like I was on a witness stand. "What did you say to your brother? You threatened him with the will. You think you can manipulate this family?" I started to answer. "Sit down," he said. "Stay in your lane." And the room laughed, not all of them, but enough. Shoulders shaking, a delicate little gasp that was really a giggle. My mother sat in the corner chair staring at her hands. I held my father's gaze for 3 full seconds. Then I said, in a voice so calm it surprised even me, "All right." I turned and walked upstairs. I closed the bedroom door and picked up my phone. Patricia Holden answered on the second ring. "Ms. Holden, can you be there at 9 tomorrow morning with the originals?" A pause. "I'll be there at 8:30. I set my alarm for 4 in the morning and sat in the dark, listening to the laughter still drifting up through the floorboards. Enjoy it, I thought. It's the last time. I left at 4:20 in the morning. No drama, just my bag, my folder, and my socks on the stairs so the boards wouldn't creak. I left Grandma's photograph face down on the nightstand, the only punctuation I needed. I drove to a Waffle House 12 minutes from the house, ordered coffee, and waited for daylight. Inside the house, I heard this later from my cousin Marcus. My father came downstairs at 7:30 in a pressed shirt, poured his coffee, and said, "Someone go get Cassidy." Nobody moved. He went himself. He knocked twice, sharp, expecting compliance. He opened the door to find an empty room, bed made, closet bare, grandmother's photograph face down on the nightstand. He stood in that doorway for a full 10 seconds. Then he came back downstairs, voice flat. Cassidy left, ran off like a coward. Davis smiled. Well, that settles it. It does, my father said. I'll make the estate announcement now since... The doorbell rang. My mother opened the door. Patricia Holden stood on the porch in a charcoal blazer with a leather briefcase and an expression like the sky before a storm breaks. My name is Patricia Holden. I am the attorney of record for Loretta Jean Marlowe's estate. I need to speak with this family immediately. What happened in the next 43 minutes is something nobody at that table has ever fully recovered from. Patricia walked into the Marlowe dining room the way she must walk into every room, unhurried, certain, carrying 2 decades of other people's secrets and knowing precisely what to do with them. My father rose to his full height. Patricia, you weren't invited. This is the home Loretta Marlowe built, she said. And I'm here because I have a fiduciary obligation to her trust's sole beneficiary. She placed the original document on the table, cream paper, notary seal, Loretta's signature in blue. Cassidy Ann Marlowe is the sole named beneficiary of an irrevocable trust executed 7 years ago. You are aware of this, Mr. Marlowe. You have been since the day your mother signed it. The room went completely still. My mother was in decline, my father said. Patricia didn't pause. Her physician conducted a cognitive evaluation the week of signing. She tested in the 91st percentile for her age group. The results are on file. Aunt Roberta leaned forward. Uncle Pete set down his coffee. My father looked at that document the way a man looks at something he suddenly realizes is loaded. Get out of my house, he said quietly. Patricia didn't move. You filed a petition with the probate court 4 weeks ago claiming you were unable to locate the trust's beneficiary. She paused. The beneficiary who slept in this house last Thanksgiving. Then she pulled out the email chain and read it aloud. She won't push back, Dad. She never does. That's the whole point. The room turned toward Davis in silence. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Patricia laid everything bare. The fraudulent petition, the timestamps, the paper trail proving my father and brother had knowingly misrepresented to a probate court that I couldn't be found. The $575,000 trust belongs to Cassidy, Patricia said, as does the lake house in Blue Ridge, all named in the original estate documents. My father's composure finally cracked. He demanded Davis do something, fix it, say something. Davis stared at the table. Dad, the trust is irrevocable. There's nothing to fix. Loretta told me this would happen, Aunt Roberta said quietly. She told me years ago. Aunt Vera nodded. She told me too. My father walked to his study and closed the door. He never came back to the table. The following morning, Patricia formally removed my father as trustee and filed a report with the Georgia State Bar regarding Davis's conduct. Faced with documentation he couldn't argue around, my father surrendered. The trust was transferred to me. The lake house was transferred to me. I paid off every dollar of student debt within the month. Davis lost clients. His law license was suspended pending review. My father called me the one who had destroyed the family. We haven't spoken since, a week. After everything settled, I drove up to the Blue Ridge cabin alone. Inside, I found a small box Grandma had left on the kitchen table, photographs of the two of us on the dock, a pressed dahlia, and a letter. You were always the one I worried about most, she wrote, because you were always the one who deserved the most. I couldn't say it loudly while I was living, so I said it the only way Frank couldn't interrupt. I love you, wild girl. Go build something beautiful. It was the first time in months that I cried from relief instead of shame. 6 months later, my debts were gone. I opened a small floral studio and named it Loretta's. I restored the vegetable garden at the farmhouse, tomatoes and dahlias planted side by side, exactly the way she always grew them. My mother found her way back slowly. She called one Sunday evening and said simply, I should have stood beside you. I'm standing beside you now. I kept that voicemail. I keep it right next to Grandma's letter. Some mornings I sit on the dock at the Blue Ridge cabin and watch the mountains go purple at dusk. And I think about what my grandmother understood long before I ever did. Her greatest gift wasn't the money. It wasn't the property. It was proof. Documented. Notarized, irrevocable proof that I had always mattered. That someone had seen me clearly. That someone had made certain I could never be erased. The farmhouse is mine now. The studio is open. The garden is growing. And for the first time in 31 years, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.